pray. Oh God, by your grace you have called us in this Diocese of Missouri to a goodly fellowship of faith. Bless our bishop and other clergy and all our people. Grant that your word may be truly preached and truly heard, your sacraments faithfully administered and faithfully received. By your Spirit, fashion our lives according to the example of your Son, and grant that we may show the power of your love to all among whom we live. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Good morning. It's good to see you all. Glad you're here, and glad that we have this opportunity to be together. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to our bishop, who is making his annual visitation here today. As some of you know who've been part of this forum in the past, when he makes his visit, this is a little bit of a free-for-all. And so I'm going to step out of the way and let you all free-for-all it with him. All yours, Bishop.
Thank you, David. I'm going to begin this morning with interpretive dance, so that you're not. It is always a joy to be here with you. You have really good bacon, so anytime that there's bacon, I'm happy to be there. This is an opportunity, really, for us to just be in conversation. If there's things that you want me to talk about, things that are going on in either the church, the world, or whatever that you would like me to say something about, I am happy to do that. So it really is your time. The caveat is, if you don't have questions for me, I have questions for you. And I have lots of really big, heavy theological questions to ask you in case you don't have questions to ask me. So I really open it up for questions, things that you might want me to just to say some things about. It really is our time together. So I turn it over to you. What questions might you have? As everybody tries not to make eye contact. Except for my child over here. I'll come to you so everybody can hear your question.
So, in the wider communion, are we on?
Yep, you're on.
Okay. In the wider communion, what are we hearing from Canterbury?
The question was, did we go? I'll trade you. Yeah, so the question is, in the wider communion, what's happening with the Archbishop of Canterbury? So many of you know, in January, the former Archbishop, Justin Welby, stepped down as Archbishop, and so we have a sede vacante, the empty chair of St. Augustine, so we don't have a Archbishop of Canterbury at the moment. That nomination is left up to the Crown nominations. So all the bishops in the Church of England are appointed. They're not elected like, we get together and elect a bishop. They're appointed. The same thing is true for the Archbishop of Canterbury. And right now they're in the process of receiving names. So any bishop across the Anglican Communion can submit their name to be, considered for Archbishop of Canterbury. In case you were wondering, no, I am not submitting my name. There's a job I would never want. But I always find it really interesting. The Church of England, we're going to have a new Archbishop of Canterbury probably by September, is what they're saying. But I find it really interesting. In the Anglican Church, we take like several months to find a new Archbishop of Canterbury, and our Roman Catholic siblings managed to get a pope in 2 days. So it's kind of like, well, what exactly are we saying here? But the process takes a while because of, because any bishop can be nominated, and they all have to be vetted before they kind of come down to make a decision. So we should have a new one sometime in September, October by the latest. Perfect. Other questions?
Tom, hold on just a second. Let me bring you the mic.
Tell us your plans for your sabbatical.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have sabbatical coming up in 10 days, 12 hours, 7 minutes, and 33 seconds. Not that I'm counting or anything. Here in the diocese, we try to do sabbatical every 5 years. And so this year will be my 5th year serving as the bishop. And you kind of imagine I started in a very interesting time. Tom was my treasurer and kind of dealing with all the craziness of COVID. So for my sabbatical, the sabbatical includes, part learning, part study, and part rest. And so for the learning part, I'm going to a program in London called Learning from London. It's about the fresh expressions that are happening in London. In the last 10 years, that diocese has doubled has increased by 50% because of these new initiatives that are happening there. And so I am, myself and Canon Doris are going because we want to figure out, well, what could we learn from them that we can apply here in our diocese to see, you know, what are some of the best practices that they're doing. So I'm doing that. I have a week and a half, 2 weeks in Cork, Ireland, where I've been pressured to write a book. So I'm pretty much compiling the prayers that are posted on social media into a book, because I've had so many people say, well, when are you writing the book? When are you writing the book? Well, sabbatical, I'm writing the book. And then after that, I'm headed off to Barbados for 3 weeks with my family for our family reunion. And the rest of the time, my plan is to explore Missouri. Because the unfortunate thing is when I first started as bishop, it was the middle of COVID. So I couldn't actually go and see parts of the city or parts of the state. So a part of this is going to be, someone gave me for Christmas the 60 hikes within 60 miles of St. Louis. So I'm going to try to get as many of those hikes in as possible during the time that I'm on sabbatical. So bit of rest, bit of fun, and a bit of learning. So thank you, Tom. Others?
Everybody might not know about the prayers that you write on a daily basis. Why don't you say a little bit more about that and how that's been part of your ministry and how you've been pressured to put them into a book?
Well, one of the things, so this started in the middle of COVID, because again, I started in COVID, and so I decided 1 week, very early on when I first got here, well, I was just going to write a prayer a day for a week and just put it on Facebook, and you know, a little bit of comfort, something stable in the middle of everything that's going on with COVID. And the week turned into 2 weeks, and the 2 weeks turned into 3 months, and the 3 months turned into 3 years. And so 5 years later, I am still writing that 1 week prayer that I was going to do to put out on Facebook. And the interesting thing is they have literally gone all over the place. I mean, people have connected to those prayers. And the question I often get is, well, you know, when do you write these prayers? And the answer is I literally write them in the morning as I'm getting up doing my routine. They're not pre-planned. It really is, I read the news, I look to see what's going on in the world, and I pray accordingly. And so it's become now a part of my spiritual practice to just simply get up in the morning, write whatever the prayer that needs to be, that I need to hear myself sometimes that morning, publish it, and I just leave it alone. I don't do a whole lot with it beyond putting it on social media. And there have been enough people who have reached out to me and said, so when you're writing the book of prayer, I want to buy your book of prayer. And I'm like, well, I don't have time to write a book of prayer. So there have been enough people now who said to me, you're going on sabbatical. You now have time. Write the book of prayers. So the gift is, most of them are already written. I just have to go through and pull the ones that they've been field tested. So I can go look at the ones that have done the best and kind of go like, okay, well, I know which ones are going in the book and which ones are not. So I'm actually really looking forward to putting that together.
How do we find them?
So if you follow me on Facebook, the question is, how do you find them? If literally on Facebook, you just search my name, and you should be able to, well, the K has to be in there. So the reason, I know David was, if you want to say a little bit about the phishing scams.
Well, I was also just going to say, or the Diocese of Missouri. They're posted on the diocesan Facebook page.
Yeah, the diocesan
as
Facebook
well.
page pulls
Yeah.
them as well. But yeah, you literally can just follow me on Facebook, and I literally just put them out every morning. As of June 11th, they're going to be on pause until October, because I'm on sabbatical. So sabbatical is I'm going to step away from doing it because I'm trying to compile the other parts of it. But all the ones going back for 5 years are still alive on my Facebook page somewhere. So, yep.
Nope. Sandy. Rip Sandy. You all, please just wait till I get you the microphone because we do record these, and so that's why we use the microphone. Thank you.
Given your you started as a bishop during COVID. I was pretty much housebound and isolated from the rest of the community for various reasons at that time. I would love to know more about your background and your journey as to what led you to be our bishop.
Okay. Well, I can safely say I was not planning on being a bishop. That was not, I didn't get up one morning and say, I think I want to be Bishop of Missouri. And it did not happen. I'll go all the way back. I was born and raised in Barbados. And so I moved to the United States when I was 14. And when I was around 11, in Barbados, you go through confirmation, which we're doing today. And in Barbados, confirmation is a year-long process. So it takes an entire year to be prepared for confirmation. The reason why is because every single ministry in the church you have to go spend some time with. So I had to go be with the Altar Guild. I had to go be with the young people's group. I had to be with the feeding ministry. Whatever the ministry is, including the priest. We had to go spend some time with each ministry over that year. And I was that precocious child at 11 that said to the priest, I want your job. Little did I know. And so, that kind of began my journey of feeling called to something. And so when I went to college and the whole 9 yards. And I don't often tell this part of the story, but there's an interesting thing that happened to me. As I was driving back I was in college. I was driving back from college on a break. And I had an offer letter I had done work with Kraft Foods. So I had an offer letter to work at Kraft Foods in their HR department. And I had a postulant's letter to go off to seminary. And I'm driving in the car, and I had to make a choice between go to work or go to seminary. And strange thing happens. Mind you, driving highways, the windows are up. The Kraft letter blows off of the chair. And I went, okay, not arguing, I guess I'm going to seminary. So I went off to seminary, did the seminary thing. I was ordained in the Diocese of Ohio. And there's a funny story on how I got to be even a candidate, furthermore being elected to be bishop here. I had served as a parish in Michigan for 14 years. So I was the rector. We'd gone through, from being a small little parish to being a much bigger parish. We built a building. We did all these things. And so one of the priests here in this diocese reached out to me and said, hey, by the way, Missouri's looking for a bishop. You might want to put your name in. And I said, I'm good. Then another priest here reached out to me and said, by the way, we're looking for a bishop. You should put your name in. And I thought, no thanks, I'm good. Then a third priest reached out to me and said, mind you, all of them are independent of each other, and said, you need to put your name in. And I went, well, my general rule of discernment is if somebody says the same thing to me 3 times, I got to pay attention. So I looked at the deadline, and there was no way I was going to get everything in by the deadline. So I said to all 3 of them, I am so sorry. There's no way I can get all these essays and everything written and in by the deadline. Unless you decide to extend the deadline, sorry, I just can't do it. So 2 days later, I got a phone call. So the part where you said if they extended the deadline that you'd have to put your name in? Well, they just extended the deadline, so go put your name in. So I literally put my name in after they extended the deadline. Had not planned on being elected. Came, we did the walkabouts and everything. And so I was convinced that I was not the one that was going to be elected. To the point where I scheduled a funeral on the day of the election. So, the election was going to be in the morning. I had a funeral planned for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so Bishop Smith at the time called to say, because again, we were watching the live stream while watching a movie with my son. I got a phone call, and they call Giovanni's phone. Now, the thing is, Giovanni's phone is always at 2%. I could call Giovanni up right now and say, can you take a screenshot of your phone? And I guarantee you his phone is probably between 10 and 2%, just perpetually. But it was Bishop Smith, and he called the wrong phone number. So he called Giovanni's phone instead of mine. But I get on the phone, and he says, congratulations, you've been elected the Bishop of Missouri. And the very first thing I could say was, what? And, everybody starts talking, and, the standing committee president and the search committee, everybody comes in and says congratulations. And it has not registered to me what has actually happened. And then Bishop Smith comes back on the phone and he says, oh, by the way, I forgot to ask you if you accept. To which all I could respond was, I think it's too late now. I think I already did. But it really was it was a surprise to me. And B, we had not planned that this was going to happen. And yet, I think in many ways, when I got here, I realized that this is the place I needed to be. That this was where God needs us to do these things together, whether I had planned on doing it or not. So, be careful what you pray for. God has a way of doing what God's going to do, whether you like it or not. So, and in many ways, I think I found my people. So, it's been a wonderful 5 years, and I'm looking forward to many, many to come. Yep.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So looking forward to the next 5 years, can you outline what or if there are going to be any diocesan efforts to enhance like children, youth, and young family ministries within the diocese?
Yep. Happy to. So when I got here, I said that I wanted to separate my ministries in 5-year chunks. My first 5 years, in my mind, is showing the diocese itself, helping us to see who we are, to build connections. So if you were paying attention to the themes of our diocesan conventions, those were deliberate, so that we are seeing each other. Last year's was one. This year is woven together, again, so that we can begin to stop seeing ourselves as like individual little congregations doing our thing and see ourselves as one big, what I said during the walkabout, so that we can see ourselves as one church in many locations. So for me, the first 5 years was really about seeing ourselves not as competition, but as companions. So, you are, St. Peter's is companion community with All Saints in Ascension, and so you do some things together. Again, it really was about us seeing each other as family, as a household. For me, the next 5 years is to take what we've learned about ourselves and look outside of ourselves. How do we now invite people to come and be part of us now that we have a better sense of who we are? I'm a data person. I like statistics, so I kind of look to see what the demographics are saying. The places that we need to be, children and youth, like you said. So Aaron Pickersgill, who is on the diocesan staff, is the missioner for children and youth. We're working, Aaron Rogers is just leaving as young adult missioner, so we're trying to figure out how we're going to reconfigure that. But the demographics are telling us that children and youth, and that young adults, that there is, and I suspect Zach is probably familiar with lots of this, but there is a lot of interest now in the church for younger folks, because it's the one place that you can experience mystery. So we're going to do some work around that. The other is around church planting. The model that we've had in the 1950s doesn't work. I keep promising to put this on a bumper sticker, Jesus will come again, the 1950s won't. But the church the churches that were founded back in the 1950s, the model was a priest, 4 or 5 people, $100,000 budget, and a building. And that model just doesn't work. And so one of the things that we're looking at is how do we begin to plant new congregations, because we know that we need to. Several of our congregations have a history of planting congregations. And it's not, we're going to plant that congregation to be competition, but we're planting them because we have something that this world needs right now, which is good news. And so, for instance, we're starting some of those efforts. At Trinity in St. Charles, we're starting a third service at 12:30 or something like that, geared primarily to the African diaspora folks. So there's lots of people from Nigeria and Liberia and Kenya that are living in St. Charles. And so the hope is that we will begin that service geared specifically towards them. And as they continue to grow, they will leave Trinity to go become their own congregation. And so we're using them as an experiment. And so my hope is to begin to ask other congregations, yours, at some point, how do you begin another service that can be spun off to go and be a congregation someplace else, because the demographics are telling us, that Episcopalians should be about 1% of the population of the state. So our state has something like 3.5 million people or something like that. So you cut that in half and then find 1%. We are still way below that 1%. So there, and the thing is, there are lots of opportunities for us to, as a church, to offer the good news. I am convinced that the Episcopal Church is made for this moment. You've seen what's happened with Bishop Buddy. You've seen what's happened with our presiding bishop. You've seen that in many ways, we as a church are taking that middle way, but also calling out places where we've gone astray. And so I think for the future of our church, we got to get this church planting thing right, but we also have to make sure that we're caring for each other, not just our young people, but our senior saints. What is it that you need from the church, but also what gift do you bring to the church that you can give out to the community? So there's work ahead of us. But as I said, my goal for the first 5 years was for us to figure out who we are first. In about 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to begin to see a campaign. It's called I Am Dio campaign. It really is saying, I am the Diocese of Missouri, to highlight the many things that are happening across the diocese that make us unique. Like we're one of the few dioceses that has a deaf church. We're one of 6 that have a predominantly South Indian congregation. So, so we are seeing the future of the church already in our diocese. It's living more into it. So I know hopefully that's helpful. Perfect. Other questions? I can hum the Jeopardy theme if anybody really needs to.
Could you speak to the community outreach efforts of the diocese, and in particular as it relates to the tornado response?
Oh, not a problem. Well, you're very familiar, I suspect, with the damage that has happened in North City and Clayton and a couple other places. I was just at St. Michael St. George this past Thursday, driving down Wyandown. I have found that I pronounce everything here the wrong way because I assume it's pronounced anyway. Wyandown. I was driving down Wyandown going to St. Michael St. George, and all the trees are gone. Like, they're just gone. And their houses damaged and all that stuff. What the diocese has been encouraging people to do is to get involved with Action STL, which is kind of direct grassroots, right on the ground, helping people with that type of stuff. The other thing that's happening is Grace Hill, which is in North City. We are in conversation right now with, I think, the Red Cross about that being a staging center for recovery efforts and all that stuff, so that can be a place that people can go to either stay temporarily, receive the services that they need. And we're encouraging people to just go volunteer, drop off water, drop off food. Because yes, we're past the immediate stage, but the long-term recovery, there are people who are still displaced. There are people whose houses have been condemned that are not going to be rebuilt. I was just reading about Centennial Church, that they're going to have to demolish the whole building because, trying to rebuild it after the tower and part of the roof collapse is probably near impossible. But the ongoing efforts, it's great when this stuff makes it onto the, I think my battery might be dying. It's great when these things are in the news. It's when they're not in the news that the work needs to continue. And so what I would encourage all of us to do is to think about, well, how can we help beyond, the splashy headlines in the weeks and months after this stuff, when the needs are going to be the greatest, because, renters and rent right now is a big thing for some people because they can't go back to their homes. We've had clergy who's had significant damage, and we're in the diocese trying to help with that. Deacon Chester over at Holy Communion, all of his windows are gone. Knocked out him and his wife are in a bedroom and a bathroom because the rest of the house is completely unstable. So we have strange things like that happening even among our clergy, and so we've been trying really hard to be A, present, and B, to support them as best as we can. This is the long-term effort. So thank you, Ellen. How are we on time?
We're fine.
Okay.
We're good.
Other questions?
I'm going to follow up on the tornado. Is there a way to have an ongoing site so that you could update every week? You know, sort of like your prayer of the day. We could have an update of the week of just, you know, what the need is, current need, what's the success of the week.
Yep.
You know, and so if it might hit somebody, say, oh, I could help them find that job. I do have a baby bed. You know,
Yeah.
whatever your wish list what might be, and one space that like all the churches could go to rather than each of us trying to create our own.
Yep. The place that you would see that, right now we're putting as much as we can in the weekly e-news from the diocese. So the Proclaim or our website. So I think Asati is, if she's not already, she will be putting up a disaster response page on the diocesan website that will have the most updated stuff that you can, you know, hey, we need volunteers for this, or we need pallets of water, or, you know, we need sheet bedding for families or something like that. So that will be on the, I think it's already on the website. I don't want to say it is and then it's not. But if it's not on the website, we're planning on it going up on the website pretty soon, because one of the things I've been trying not to do is to be a hindrance to the work that needs to happen. Because I know I show up to go visit something and it's like, oh, the bishop's here, and that distracts from all that's going on. So I've been kind of just waiting until things have settled a little bit. But we will have a clearinghouse of here's how you can be an effective neighbor in responding to those who are affected.
The other thing, talk a little bit about the partnerships that you've promoted and connected people with. Ours was All Saints Ascension and the other ones. And then again, how could we find out what the other groups are doing? Or is there, again, some sharing? You talk about us being all together.
Yeah.
What is it we could do together?
Yep. So the companion communities was something that I came up with, last year before, as a way of saying, you know, we don't really get to know each other as congregations. How could we get to know each other a little bit better? So every single congregation in the diocese is peered with another one. Like I said, you're peered with All Saints and Ascension, and the gift is that you get to share some of Valerie being in between both, or Deacon Valerie being in between both congregations. The intention of those relationships is to deepen our relationships and our sense of connectedness to each other. For a very long time, we kind of played in our own sandbox. You know, it's about me and what we're going to do. And I am very much convinced that the future of the church is in collaboration. We can't do all things, but we can do more things when we're collaborating together. And so being attuned to what's happening at All Saints and Ascension, and then being attuned to what's happening here at St. Peter's, that builds a deeper partnership that you can say, hey, we're going to do this together. I know, like, you had your garden party, and part of the garden party proceeds is to help with the feeding ministries at...
all of the proceeds.
Yes, all the proceeds are going to All Saints and Ascension, Trinity,
and St.
John's. So again, there's an opportunity. There's another place where we are doing things together. That it's not, oh, this is just going to benefit us. We're looking at how we can do this stuff together. We don't have hey, here's a coordinated all the things that you all are doing, but for convention, the intention is that each of the companion communities that they will tell us the stories of what you did together. You know, tell us the story of, you know, the garden party or fundraiser that helps these. These are the things I think that help weave us together, hence the theme. But one of the things that I've been really emphasizing since I've been here is telling our stories, because we do a really poor job sometimes of telling the good things that we actually do. And so what's going to happen is in September, each congregation is going to get an invitation to say, tell us a story of how you were a companion to somebody else. Not just your companion community, but a companion to somebody else in the community. We're going to collect those stories, and they're going to go into the mission and ministry yearbook that we do every year as a way of saying, this is how we have been connected one to another. I was mentioning to David, it was such a gift that when St. Michael St. George was damaged, that they could come here to have confirmation. I'm not sure if that would have happened 6 or 7 years ago. So the fact that we are able to do that type of stuff together now, that it was, hey, come, I mean, I call David up and say, hey, by the way, St. Michael St. George doesn't have power or anything. Can we do confirmation? And without skipping a beat, he said, of course, let us know exactly what we need. And so for me, that's building those things, you know, that you all just did Evensong for Ascension. You know, that's awesome. That there's some collaboration with St. Tim's and youth group. And I mean, that's kind of that's what I was hoping for as a church, that we would find ways of, let's do this stuff together, because we can do so much better when we do it together. So, Sandy, then back up here.
Bishop, I'm 76 years old, and I've been coming here since I was 16. And I have to disagree with you on one factor, and that is, if 5 or 6 years ago, St. Michael's would have asked us to do the same thing, we would have done it in a heartbeat, without question. Now, whether or not they would have asked
That's the part
is
that I'm
another
talking-
question. But if they asked,
You answered
any
my-
church would have asked, because we are one in faith.
Yep. Well, no, you answered the question that the response I was going to give. I probably should have said, I am not sure they would have asked. So, no, not that you wouldn't have been gracious. I suspect that you would have been gracious. I'm not sure if they would have actually been able to, if they would have asked the question.
As I look at what I see rising anti-Semitism in our country and really around the world, what role do you see the church taking in that? As I even reflect back on what happened in World War II with Germany, and it greatly concerns me what I see happening.
Well, I might get in trouble for saying this. You know, don't tell the bishop. Oh, that's right. Well, I'll tell you a story. In the 1928 prayer book, when you were getting ready to baptize a child, and it wasn't done on Sunday mornings, usually Saturday evenings or something like that, the priest would look at the parents and say, name this child, right? Some of you might remember that. I loved that. The reason why I loved that is because it was saying, name this child so that God can claim the child and redeem and bless that child. I think in this moment, we need to name the child. I think we need to name evil when we see it. And I don't mean that, like evil as some nebulous thing out there. When we are actively trying to distort people, I don't see how we don't name that as evil. When we are saying that someone is less than because of their faith, that's just, I mean, it is what it is. When we are saying that as a nation, we now value separating families because they don't have the right document or the right pronoun or something like that, I can't say how we don't name that as evil. World War II, there's an interesting story that's told about a church that was built right next to one of the railroads that took some of the Jews to Auschwitz. The train would go by, and the folks in the trains would see the church, and they would cry out, "You're going to help save us." And the church would hear them screaming, and they would play the organ louder to drown out the voices of those who were going by, headed towards their death. And in that instance, the church was just silent. And in a sense, in this time, I don't think the church can afford to be silent. We run the risk of losing our integrity and losing our souls if we are not able to speak up and name things as they are. It means that we're going to have some hard conversations sometimes. It means that we will disagree, and my grandmother was a great proponent. You can disagree without being disagreeable. And that's the big thing. We have to learn how to disagree without being disagreeable, but we also have to learn to name things as they are. For us, we don't take this whole calling evil thing lightly. We take a promise. Part of our baptismal vows, is to fight evil, and we don't think too much about it. But the first part in fighting something is naming it. We can't bury our heads in the sand and pretend that, that people aren't being very much hurt right now in our country, in our neighborhoods, because of just being who they are. I mean, this hits home a lot for me, because I'm an immigrant. I immigrated from Barbados. I was just in Nova Scotia the other day, and I had to worry, Canada, I had to worry as to, am I going to get back into the country? My husband is a green card holder, and so right now we're not leaving the country with him because we're not quite sure if he will get back into the country. So I mean, it's stuff like that. I mean, this really hits very much home. I mean, I'm headed to the UK and whatnot, and then Jalon is going with me to Barbados and all of these things. Coming back, I am not quite sure what all of that means, with the uncertainty that's out there. So when I say that this stuff hits home, it literally hits my home directly on every in every sense. And so what I'm encouraging us as a church to do is we have to call out when things are wrong, and we can't just be silent or kind of wait while somebody else is going to do it. The reality is we're the ones that we've been waiting for. Is that helpful? Awesome. Thank you. I think we have time for like one more.
Yes,
Okay.
if it's a quick one.
One quick one.
How do we label what's wrong without being disagreeable?
Now, Jesus had this whole thing about with love. I think that's what we do. For those of you who were at the 8 o'clock, you're going to hear a little bit about praying as part of the sermon. As people of faith, I think we begin with prayer. We pray for those places that are hard. We pray for those people that we find hard to love. I think that's where we start, because prayer is about changing us, not changing them. So we start with prayer. And I think that we also we begin to name these things in the spaces that we are in. What I have found is it's much better for me to tell a story of what's happening in my family or what's going on with me than to try to say to somebody, here's the facts. When you tell your personal story to other people of how you've experienced either seeing the evil around or seeing some of this stuff, that is a much more compelling, again, and it's not about changing the other person's mind, but it's about sharing the story of, here's someone that I know who is going through this and what this means. Because it's too easy to make all of this nameless and faceless. When we say all immigrants are bad, we're trying to make people faceless. When we're saying, oh, well, anti-Semitism is okay, it's another way of trying to make people faceless or invisible. But when you tell the story of, hey, my Jewish friend is worried about going to her synagogue on a Friday because there have been threats, that's something that someone else can connect to. When I say, hey, my family is worried about traveling because we don't know if we're going to be able to get back into the country where we put down roots and where we live and move and have our being, those are stories that folks can relate to. So part of it, I think, is telling the story of how you're experiencing these things.
Just a quick comment. Some of the things are difficult to tell the story because, for instance, the aid and people are dying. That's pretty huge. I don't relate to it personally. How do you tell that story?
Well, I think you can still highlight the story. One of the most powerful things that I experienced was listening to a Holocaust survivor just talk about the journey, not even how they experienced the Holocaust, but the journey of leaving their family, leaving the village where they were living, being loaded into a boxcar and sent off. Just hearing that person tell their firsthand account was transformative for me. And so part of what I think that we do is we begin to tell the thing is we got to find the stories in order to be able to tell them. So, you know, if you don't know someone who's an immigrant who's dealing with this stuff, well, maybe it's time to go make some friends who have those stories so that you can actually hear and share what's going on. You know, like what's happening in Gaza and all of that stuff as well. You know, there's war raging in Sudan. There are places where all of these things are happening, and being able to share or highlight the stories of individuals. Because if you say Gaza, it's too much for our minds to, you know, to process. If you say, hey, my friend Ben Gurion, who's dealing with this, shared this, that makes it much more human, and it makes it much more tangible. You know, we are incarnational people.
Kathy, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to stop you, okay?
We can talk later.
Thank you all for your good questions and for being part of this, Bishop. Thank you for
very
this.
welcome.
I have two things for you. Jacqueline Van Wilden has put on each table a few pieces of blank paper. If you are someone who has an email address, and if you're not receiving information from St. Peter's, please give us your email address, and also include your cell phone number. As you may have seen, or I hope you have heard about, and if you've not heard about, we had an accident here on Friday afternoon that resulted in some significant damage to the church. That's an example of something that we communicate about almost immediately, as soon as we can. And again, we send out a newsletter every Friday morning. It's also a way that we have of communicating about deaths that occur in the parish and other significant things. So what I encounter when we have something that happened like this on Friday is that there's some people who go, what happened? And we push that out immediately. So please make sure that we have your email address and a way to communicate with you. The second thing is that some of you, and I know because I heard from some of you, may have received a text message from me or somebody who said they thought they were trying to pretend to be me this weekend. This is a frequent occurrence that we've had over the last several years. It is a scam. I will never, ever, ever ask you for money, for gift cards, for anything by text, by email, or in any other way. I may personally ask you for something. I like to do that and do that quite frequently, but you will never receive a text message from me saying, hey, I am in a meeting and I need you to go get Apple gift cards. Never. And if there is anything about it that doesn't look right, it's not right. And they're always signed in an unusual way, like with Reverend David Hodges in all capital letters, or Reverend David Hodges. Hopefully you know by now, I am much more personal than that. I don't send things that way. Yes, ma'am.
So you're saying you did not get my wire transfer?
No.
No. So again, if you ever have any questions, just do not ever respond. And also, quite frankly, we don't need to know when you get those, because we have tried and there's nothing that we can do. Our IT people have worked on it, and they're just scams. The diocese has had to deal with it, as have
All
many
the time.
churches across the country.
I think our bank sent out something, and the first thing you look at is the address line. And if you look at the address line on that email from David, quote on David, it has nothing to do with St. Peter's or David or anything. So always check the address line first on who sent it to you.
And please know that I appreciate the desire and the willingness to respond. I really do. This church is filled with people who would respond if I was asking for us to do something like that. So I genuinely appreciate that. But again, just know that that's never going to be a way that I or any of the clergy will ask for you to help support any part of our ministry here. All right.
It usually asks you to contact whatever that is.
Or click a
Right.
link or
Yeah.
something.
I want to ask you for a favor.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, I'll ask you to do lots of things, but it's not going to ever be in that way. Okay. All right. If you're being confirmed or received, the bishop will be meeting with you up in Grace Chapel in just a few minutes. So I invite you to head that way. And thank you all for being part of this. God bless you.
Thank you.